Welcome back, everybody, to NEO Student Updates. Today, I'm joined by Mr. David Fisher again. He came on earlier and spoke with David Frazier, but with the fall semester coming up, we wanted to kind of give you an opportunity to get the information about financial aid. Again, it's always good to have that information on hand, and then kind of know some of the resources available and where to go if you have questions. So, David, coming into the fall semester is a little bit different from the summer semester, but it's kind of the same. So kind of explain the process.
It's basically the same. The main difference is in the fall, we're going to automatically award you aid based on your FAFSA information. Summer is a little different. You have to we have to look at it a little bit more closely in the summer to see if you're still eligible for loans, if you're still eligible for Pell, because there's different regulations in the summer. In the fall, that's not the case. So basically, you fill out your FAFSA application. The next step would be to start checking your email, because that's how NEO is going to communicate with you. We're going to send you email saying, we've received your FAFSA. Here's information. If we need missing information, if you have documents you need to turn in, we'll send you an email, and then we'll direct you to the self-service portal, and you can sign on there and see what documents you're missing. When you go into self-service, you're going to, if it's an actual document that you need to fill out, there's actually going to be a hyperlink there. You click on that document, it pulls it right up. You can print it off, fill it out, sign it, and then send it back to us. And you can do that in one of many ways. You can upload it through the secure student portal. You can fax it to us, or you can mail it. I wouldn't suggest emailing forms to us, because email is not really a secure way to get things to us, particularly tax information. So I wouldn't do that, but that upload through our portal is very easy. It only takes 3 clicks, and you can upload a document to us. You sign in right at the very bottom of financial aid self-service. It says secure document upload. You click on that. It's then going to have a place where you click to pick the file you want to upload, and then you click upload. It uploads that file, and you're done. And it's going to have since you sign into the portal, it's already going to have your name and student ID attached to it. So that's really helpful to us. And then that's a secure way to get us those documents, like tax forms and verification worksheets and any other kind of documents, because it goes right directly into a secure drive. And then we have them. You don't have to worry about anything happening to those documents, them going, somewhere else. If you happen to do it through email, that is a possibility. Because email is not secure, someone can grab information from that. But that's a good way to do that. And some of the things on there are not documents, but actions you have to do. For instance, everyone has to do 3 things. Answer 2 questions on self-service, which is it's in another area of self-service, and then also read the terms and conditions for your financial aid. And everyone's going to have that, but that's not a document. That's going to a portion of the financial aid self-service, clicking on the terms and conditions tab, reading the information, and clicking submit. Until the student does that, they can't accept student loans if we've offered those to them, because that's a requirement to be able to open up the tab in self-service that allows students to accept or decline their student loans. Grants are automatic. We don't have to do that, but if you want a student loan, you have to do that terms and conditions, and it's actually going to explain about student loans in terms and conditions so that you understand how they work, and then you'll be able to get in there to accept or decline those. And the questions just have to do with some legal jargon we have to do with, we can't use your financial aid to pay all the charges on your account without your permission. There's only certain charges we can pay without your permission. So if you want to use your financial aid to pay any charges you might have, you need to go in there to the self-service and answer those questions, and that lets us then use that financial aid to pay things like parking stickers and library fines, anything that's not considered what's the government calls an institutional charge. Those, we need your permission to pay those things with your financial aid.
Right.
So that's something everyone has to do, and those aren't really documents, they're just things you do on self-service itself.
Right. And so getting started, you use that self-service portal, but even before that, so if you're an incoming freshman, hopefully your high school counselor talked to you about it, but the free application for federal student aid opened for this coming fall last October.
Last October, yes, you can begin filling it out.
And so for students who haven't necessarily filled that out yet, can they still fill that out?
Absolutely, yeah, they can still fill out for the fall. You would fill out the 2021 FAFSA for the fall semester. It'll use, it asks questions about income. You're going to use your 2018 taxes to answer those income questions when it asks those. Several years ago, they went back to 2 years ago rather than just 1 year, because that allows you to fill the FAFSA out sooner, and it also allows you to use the Irs Data Retrieval to actually download your tax information into your FAFSA. When you fill the FAFSA out, there's actually a place where it asks you, do you want to download your data from the IRS? You say yes, it takes you to the IRS website. You sign in, name, address, date of birth, those things. If everything matches what you put in there, then it allows you to securely download your tax information into the FAFSA, and you don't have to then have a copy of your taxes and check which line number you need to look at, et cetera.
Right.
It's just going to do it automatically. And since your 2018 taxes were due back in 2019, they should be done by now. You should be easily be able to use that data retrieval tool to get just download those tax information automatically into your FAFSA. Makes it a lot easier, and you don't have a lot simpler.
And so for students who might be just coming out of high school, maybe they're not 18 yet, or maybe they still live with their parent or guardian, can they retrieve their guardian's information?
They can, if those people give them the information that they would need. Basically, when you do the data retrieval, what it's going to want is your name, social security number, date of birth, and then the address you used when you filled out the taxes, because it uses all three of those things to verify that you're really who you say you are in order to download that information. If all that stuff matches what's in the IRS database, then it'll let you download that information into the FAFSA.
Right.
There are certain people who can't use it. People like married people who file separately can't use the data retrieval because you can only get one of them. You can't do two. But parents, if parents are divorced and there's only one parent, then they can do it. If parents file married filing jointly, they can do it. But there are a couple of, and they ask you qualifying questions in the FAFSA. And if you answer, I believe the answers are no to all of them. If you answer no to all of them, then you can use the data retrieval. If you answer yes to any of them, then that means you can't. And then you'll have to go to your copy of your taxes and put the information in yourself. And it's still very clear, though, when you click on a field in the FAFSA, it has a pop-up window on the right that says this, would come from line so-and-so on your 2018 tax form. So it's pretty self-explanatory. You just have to read the little box that pops up next to it to tell you what line to look at in order to get the correct number. And
that's one of the things that with some of the apprehension that people have when coming into financial aid is it's dealing with money. It's sometimes dealing with taxes. And it seems like the learning curve is going to be very steep. But all of these tools, our online learner tool, the FAFSA tool, are all made to kind of guide you through that process. Yes, they are. And each field on the FAFSA, when you go, if you click on a field, it has all the information about that field. It comes up in a little pop-up window on the right side of the page, and then even in that pop-up window is a more information link, and you can click on that and it'll tell you even more information that you might need to know if what's on there is not clear. But it's there's multitude of information out there to help you. Another thing that we find students sometimes have an issue, new students not so much, but
sometimes returning students, they filled their FAFSA out last year. It's time to go in and fill it out again. You have to sign in with this FSA username and password. Well, if you don't remember that, you can't sign back in to fill out your FAFSA. So make sure you remember that. Make sure you write it down, save it in your phone, something like that. You'll have to change your password periodically, but your username never changes. And the email address you use to verify that username doesn't change either. So you can always retrieve the username and the password if you remember that email address you used when you initially set up your FSA ID. So just like with anything, if you forget your password in Gmail, you click on reset password, it sends you a code, you put that code in and it allows you to reset your password. The FSA ID is the same way. If you can't remember your password, click on forgot password, it'll send an email to your email address, you put that code back in, then it allows you to reset that password.
And many students might have an email address assigned to them from their high school.
Don't use that.
Don't use the email address, because chances are, in many cases,
that
they'll
email
wipe
address
that
goes
system.
away.
They'll get rid of those email addresses.
Yeah, and if you're transferring to another school from NEO, don't use your NEO password email, because when you get to your new school, your NEO email won't work anymore. So make sure it's some kind of a generic email like a Gmail or Yahoo or any of the services that are mostly free. Use one of those, because that way you can always have access to that, and you won't be caught in a situation where you can't get to the email to be able to reset your password, because you have to every so many days. So you'll need to do that.
And so once a student fills out their aid form, once a student fills out their FAFSA, and you have that information, kind of run us briefly through the different types of aid that they can expect to receive.
Sure. When you fill out the FAFSA, you get it spits out a document called the Student Aid Report. Student Aid Report is a summary of all the answers you put on your FAFSA. It also includes what's called your EFC, which stands for Expected Family Contribution. It doesn't really mean that's how much you're going to have to pay. It's really just a number that the federal government uses to determine how much financial need you have. So that EFC number, it corresponds to a chart that they use to determine how much Pell Grant money students are eligible for. The lower that number is, the more Pell Grant money you're eligible for. If your EFC number is 0, then you qualify for the maximum. As it goes up, you qualify for less, and then eventually, I believe the number now is somewhere around 5,200 and something. You run out of eligibility for a Pell Grant. You're still eligible for student loans, but you wouldn't be eligible for grants anymore if your EFC gets too high.
Right.
But everyone's eligible for student loans. There's two kinds. There's a subsidized loan and an unsubsidized loan. Subsidized loan, the government pays the interest on that loan while you're going to school. So it's if you're doing student loans, that's the one you want, because it's going to be less expensive for you.
Right.
You're not going to accrue interest while you're going to school. The unsubsidized loan accrues interest while you're going to school. You don't have to make payments on either one of those student loans. But the unsub does accrue interest. I always tell students, if you want to, you can subsidize your unsubsidized loan yourself, and that will actually ultimately could save you thousands of dollars in interest. Because while you're going to school, if you can afford a couple $100s a year, you can pay the interest on that unsubsidized loan, and then when you get out of school, you still only owe what you borrowed, not what you borrowed plus all the interest.
Right.
And that helps you down the road. You have a less of a payment and not as much of a loan balance. And I believe when you fill out the master promissory note, because everyone has to do that for a student loan, it asks you if you want to be sent documents from the Department of Ed, and if you check that box, then they'll send you, and it'll actually tell you what your interest has accrued and how you can pay that if you want to.
And that's when in an era where everything is digital, sometimes it can serve as a good reminder to get those paper documents, or even get emails with updates on your interest and your loan amount.
Yep.
And an important thing about student loans is they have to be repaid eventually.
Yes.
However, like you said, you don't have to pay those while you're in school.
Correct.
But there's not a penalty for prepaying or paying while you're in school.
Not at all. You can, if you have some students who, what they do, if they do get a refund off of their student loans, they take that refund money and pay off what they didn't. So they actually, then that loan immediately becomes a lesser loan amount. So you're not having to have a big payment down the road. Also, with student loans now, there are you want to make sure when you graduate you do two things. You consolidate your loans, because each year you go to school you get a separate student loan. So when you get out of school, if you have 4 or 5 student loans, you got 4 or 5 payments. You want to consolidate those loans into one, and then you get one interest rate too. That's an average of the different ones. And then you want to sign up for income-based repayment, because then rather than the standard 10-year repayment, your payment is based on your income. So therefore, initially when you get out of school, a lot of people don't make very much money immediately. This allows them to pay less as they earn more money. Then your student loan payments goes up as you earn more, but when you're not making a lot of money, your student loan payments are not as high. And so it helps you to do those two things, to consolidate and then to sign up for income-based repayment. That allows your payment to not be so much when you're not making very much money.
Right. And also with student loans, you might be eligible for up to a certain amount. Maybe you think that you need a certain amount, but halfway through the semester you realize, oh, I don't need as much as I've taken out.
Right.
They can pay that back.
They can. In fact, I can even, for instance, sometimes people will get because student loans are always dispersed in 2 disbursements, once in the fall, once in the spring. We have students that figure out, I got enough in the fall, I don't really need the spring. They can come into the financial aid office and we can cancel that spring disbursement, and now they're not going to have to pay that money back.
Right.
And so that's something that students do frequently, and it's another way to help you save money. If you don't need that money for the fall, if you got a refund, or for the spring, if you got a refund in the spring, put that in the bank and use that money rather than having to borrow more.
Right. And so we discussed Pell, which is a federal grant program. We discussed subsidized and unsubsidized loans, which are also federal programs. Talk a little bit about now state programs and then institutional programs that we have.
There's 2 state programs that students can use. One is Oklahoma's Promise. They sign up for that in high school, and then as they go to high school, once they graduate, their high school certifies to the state of Oklahoma that they completed all the requirements for Oklahoma's Promise, and then the state of Oklahoma will pay their tuition to any of the state schools in Oklahoma. So if you come here, you'll get an amount that's equal to the tuition that you pay. But it's not just for tuition, it can pay other things besides tuition. If you have a tuition scholarship that already pays your tuition, you can use your Oklahoma's Promise to pay for your room, or you can use it to pay for the fees that you're charged. Anything. It's for the amount of your tuition, but it's not just for tuition. It can pay other charges.
Right.
And there's also another grant. It's called OTAG, which stands for Oklahoma Tuition Aid Grant. It's to students with lower EFCs and also who fill their FAFSA out by the deadline each year. So students who have that low EFC and fill their FAFSA out by January 15th, 2020, they would also be eligible for that additional $1,000 from the state of Oklahoma, in addition to Oklahoma Promise, in addition to Pell Grants, all those things. They would be able to get those. And then our scholarships for NEO, there are scholarships you apply for. As far as there are academic scholarships, you apply for those. The deadline's March 1st each year. Based on your ACT score and your high school GPA, you can qualify for several different awards through NEO. And then there's also activity and performing awards from all of the athletic department, the band, ag department, drama, all across the board. And those scholarships are decided by those people in those areas, and usually there's an audition process or a train of some sort. You would get in touch with a coach or the director of that program to see what their scholarships are. So those are something that you would start the process, like if you're an incoming freshman, you would start that process in October or November for the next fall to do those things.
And as we get ready to start the fall semester for returning students, that deadline's also March?
Yes. Most of the scholarships are for incoming freshmen. One that is not are foundation scholarships. They can be, anyone can apply for those, but their deadline is March 1st as well. So if you're a returning student, there's an application for foundation scholarships. You fill that out, turn it into the foundation, and then they have literally somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 scholarships. Some of them are very specific for certain students in certain majors. Some of them are more general. So when you're filling out their application, if you know of a specific one you might qualify, you could put that on there, or just put any eligible, and then they'll look at your information and their scholarships and see which ones you might qualify if you qualify for any of the foundation scholarships.
And that's an important point to make too, is that we have our institutional scholarships. So when students fill out their scholarship form, that applies them for any institutional academic scholarships available. However, there's a separate form
for the foundation
that they need to fill out with the NEO Development Foundation, which is the fundraising arm of NEO. They're the ones that offer those dozens of other scholarships available. So it's really important that when you come back in the springtime and you're filling out your scholarship forms, that you fill out both the institutional form and the foundation form.
Yeah, if you're, because people are eligible for both, and so filling out the application is not hard. And even if you don't get something, you've only spent 20 or 30 minutes, and you might end up getting several hundred or even $1,000 for that 30 minutes of work filling out the application.
And if a student has gone through the online portal, or maybe they're stuck at some point and they've scoured the internet and they can't find the answer to that, how do they get in contact with your office?
There's actually two ways. You can call us. Call our number and we'll talk to you. We also have an email, neofinancialaid@neo.edu, and you can email us questions through that, and that's checked every day. And so a lot of times students will ask questions through there and we can answer them for them. And as always, you can always call the financial aid office.
And is there anything else you want to make sure students know?
Check your email.
Thanks very much. And that's David Fisher. If you have any questions, we'll have links in the description of the video about how to find out more information, how to contact the financial aid office. But until next time, thank you for joining us for today's NEO Student Update. Bye.